Hang in there, it
that
is!
Smylie Kaufman for 61. Wow.
I'm Smylie Kaufman, and this is The Smylie Show.
Welcome back to The Smylie Show. And Smylie, this is probably the most euphoric you're ever going to find me joining you on this show, because if you're not watching on YouTube, please go there right now. I'm currently sitting at Hayes Place, next to the Hay, little par 3 course out here in Pebble Beach, California, where I learned to play golf. So my earliest golf I played. Just had a delightful little putting session with the family out here. Then had a nice little lunch here. Had the tin can nachos, the famous margarita that we discussed on the show a number of times. I'm sitting next to the first tee here at the Hay. I'm watching people tee off. I do some live commentary. I'm in golf heaven. Really, the only thing I'm bummed about it is, buddy, you should be here. I mean, this is our scene out here, man. This does not get any better.
I knew there was going to be a ton of regret not being at the Walker Cup, and especially where it's at, being the Cypress Point. But the one thing I also will have to turn my heads to here is that, of course, you've already made your way through the merch tent. I see all of the Cypress logos, the Walker Cup merch, just not a surprise.
It's, I could have gone heavier, and I probably should have gone heavier. I restrained myself to a certain degree. Some of these pieces I've already had, but yeah, I need to kind of get the family geared up. Got Walker little crew neck. This is just a phenomenal hat. Whoever was in charge of making this hat, I gotta say, like, a huge shout out to. So I was there. I was at Cypress on Monday. Played a little round. We're gonna get into that, preview the course, but the Cypress Point, the members and the staff there are so excited for this thing. They're fired up. They were in the merch tent, telling us how excited they were to volunteer and be a part of this. And the USGA, they were out there kind of putting pin placements in, talked to a couple of the guys that were setting up the course. I mean, this is going to be, I cannot possibly tell you how excited I am for this Walker Cup, just being out there and being around the whole process of setup. And just a huge kudos to the people at Cypress Point, the people at the USGA that are involved in making this thing happen, because it is going to be amazing when y'all see it on TV this weekend.
So what about the weather forecast? Since we're already out there, give me a sense of what to expect. I know it's a little bit of an unknown when you're on the coastline on the Monterey Peninsula, but what have you seen this week so far, and what to expect the rest of the week?
It's your classic, the marine layers in full effect, as you'll see on some videos we put out this week out there. We had a thick kind of fog that we played in for most of yesterday, looking at maybe kind of mid to high 50s into mid 60s. So just classic Monterey Peninsula weather out here. And then and we'll get into what the defenses of the course are going to be, because it's wind dependent, of course, out here, right? There are days when it gets blowing 20, 25, 30, where that's really the teeth that Cypress Point has. Right now, the wind's kind of sitting around 10-ish miles per hour in the forecast, maybe gusts up to 15, 20. So that could make the course play a little bit easier. But I mean, the first item I have on my notes for the preview today is the rough is up big time. Like I did a classic.
You caught a little bit of it, is what you're telling me?
I caught a little bit of it. We did the ball drop video walking down one fairway, cutting over to the left rough, because you had to. It is the thickest rough on the course, is on the left side of both 1 and 14. But on 2, I hit what was a fine drive, kind of missed my target a little bit right. We took us like a solid 5 to 7 minutes to find my ball. Like it would have been a lost ball if we were actually playing competition. We finally find it. Basically everything on the course is going to be just pitched out. There's going to be no real play out of the rough. You have to hit fairways, except for one location, an iconic spot on 16, where they have shaved to the right of that green side bunker on your aiming spot when you're kind of aiming at the center of the green on 16. They've shaved the front there. Ooh. So if you do not carry that ball all the way on the green and hold it, it's coming all the way back in the water, as I found out the hard way on Monday. It's like the greens. They should have the greens running about 12 and a half is what I'm told for most greens, except for some that have some pretty dramatic slopes. So I believe 1, 4, 18. There might be a few others where they're going to slow them down a little bit, but they're going to really kind of pick up the speeds on Wednesday and Thursday. And then, so it's a Saturday and Sunday competition, but they're going to roll the greens and recut pins between each session, going from morning to afternoon on Saturday and Sunday.
Wow.
So greens are going to be primo. The fairway conditions, the turf conditions are so good right now, and the rough is diabolical. So if we get a little bit of wind out here, Smylie, I mean, this thing is going to look so good on TV and play so interesting when you're watching it in person. It's going to be phenomenal.
Oh, I think we all kind of understand and know that when we turn on the TV and Cypress Point is on, it's going to look incredible. But talk to me about how this place is going to kind of show itself from a match play perspective. Of course, one of the greatest matches of all time that we've kind of told people to go read this book, The Match with Byron Nelson and Ben Hogan playing Ken Venturi and. Gosh, who was his partner? I can't even remember. But
Eddie Lowry, maybe I don't know. Yeah,
no. Eddie Lowry was the guy he's the one that set up the match.
Set up the match up. Yeah,
and he was the caddy for Francis we met. So if it all comes full circle here at Cypress Point. But tell me how you see this this golf course in Cypress Point playing as a match play course, because from what I've seen is that two of the par fives, the 10th hole, and then also the 6th hole or 5th hole.
The 5th hole, it's interesting because I saw the sign posted on the back of 5, where they're listing kind of hole length, hole par, hole number. They listed as a par 5 when we played on Monday, but per the USGA Instagram account, they had a pretty cool video where they went through each hole at Cypress, narrated by Condoleezza Rice, who's a member at Cypress. Yeah, that they listed that as a par 4, both 5 and 10 being par 4s. So which really effectively doesn't matter in a match play situation, but just interesting because I would have done it the other way around. I would have had 6 plays a par 4 instead of 5. But let's just get into some notes. So first of all, played it on Monday, Labor Day. Shout out to our caddy Brian Griffin. One of the best hangs I've had as a caddy at Cypress Point. It was really fun going around there with him. Mentioned the green speeds, 12.5 is what they're looking to kind of run them. Had a nice little grass nerd note with Brian. We were on 16 green. He was pointing out like little patches of 16 green that are an ultra dwarf Poa annua. So like, I didn't even know that they bred ultra dwarf Poa. Like, I don't know if this is something that happens in a lab. And he's like, yeah, it putts a little bit different. I'm like, this is perfect. Grass nerd of me loves that. I fired a little, it was a 77 handicap adjusted, but it was really a 79 because I did make not a snowman, not a quad on the 5th hole. I made a 9. Course management was pretty bad. Made a birdie on 6, 8, and 9. Just one of the dumbest approaches I've ever hit on 8 on the left side of a pin that was tucked left and made a birdie putt there. But it was like course is playing fantastic. And I want to rewind it a little bit to, got some history notes for you here for Cypress Point here, Smylie. So let's start back in 1774. Okay. And we're going to delve into the diary of one Tomas de la Peña, who was the first person to coin the nickname here for this course, La Punta de Cipreses. That is where the Cypress Point nickname comes from. It's stuck, of course, the name of this club. The Monterey cypress, the tree that is famous, this club is famous for, exists only at Cypress Point Club and at Point Lobos State Park. So very cool, unique tree to this course. Originally, we know this is, of course, a Dr. Alistair McKenzie design, but Seth Rayner was actually originally contracted to design this course, and he had some preliminary sketches at Cypress, then untimely passes away, and they go and talk to Dr. Alistair McKenzie. He, of course, is famous for designing this thing and making it one of the greatest courses in the world. Doc was mid-50s at the time in 1927 when they reached out to contract him. Already had a degree in chemistry from Cambridge at the age of 20, and then added additional degrees in medicine and natural science by 25. And he, of course, served as a civil surgeon in the Somerset Light Infantry during the Boer War. And that is a key point of Dr. Alistair McKenzie's life, because it is at that point when he took a particular interest in the camouflage that the Boers used, and that kind of influenced his whole designs and some of the things you see off the tee. And I think that leads right into previewing the course itself, because I think a lot of this week is what lines are you choosing off the tee? What's the ball going to do once it gets on the ground? And what you're seeing off the tee where you think is safe might not be safe. And the more uncomfortable line might be the one to take if you want to be successful here at Cypress Point. So that's your big tee up there, Smylie. I don't know if there's anything you want to dig into there.
Well, I think just the golf course and the way it flows is to me is an incredible match play golf course. You have a start that's friendly, a short par 4 followed by a par 5, but then the beginning of part of this course, there's so many birdies to be made. The 4th hole is a tough par 4, but you have those back-to-back par 5s. If 5 is played as a par 5 or 4, then obviously that's a meaty par 4. But in match play, it's not of a big of importance because you're just playing whoever's in your group. So numbers really, a par is really not a huge deal when it comes to this, whether it's a par 4 or par 5. But even the stretch after that, you go 5 and 6, and then I always found that 8's just a little flip wedge for the most part. That little dog-leg right around the sand dunes, and then the 9th hole being a drivable par 4 that typically plays around 300 yards. 10 being that par 4, par 5. So this entire first 9 to 10 holes is so good for match play, I feel like. And I'm wondering, after that 10th hole, from your perspective, of somebody's played Cypress Point a bunch, what do you see that back 9 playing like, as far as just where those matches are going to most likely be won or lost? Are we going to see these matches make it to 18, or do you see a lot of matches that maybe get completed before we even get to 16?
It'll be interesting because, 11 is one that I'm trying to remember which tees, because they had some tees netted. So we try to kind of play the back tees as much as we could to get a feel for how it would be for the Walker Cup, but then we were moved up a couple places. So there's, of course, those 2 fairway bunkers on 11 where I think some of these guys are going to have the distance to, like a Michael Lasasso maybe can fly that thing in the air, but it's going to come into play there. So it's how are you approaching that? Are you laying up short of that? You have, more club in your hand. So that maybe that makes that less of a scoring hole. 12, of course, that sort of dog leg slightly to the right. Not an overly difficult green complex. There's, sand dunes on the right and those sort of greenside bunkers on the left. But that's where if you can kind of take an aggressive line off the tee and push it up there, that's another wedge in your hand you could score. 13, they have the tees way back. We played those tees, but still it's only like a 380-yard hole from the back, 390-yard hole. So you can push that one up pretty far. 14 is going to be very interesting. And I kind of want to rewind and kind of start at the top, but I like to talk about 14 a little bit right here, because this is where I think the rough comes into play in such an interesting way, where, of course, 14 for most people, the line is just go safely out to the left, because if you go right there, there's that huge tree. I don't even know if it's a cypress, but it's been there forever. It's this massive tree complex where you're jailed effectively, unless you can hit the most incredible acrobatic high shot, and not with the wedge either. You have maybe like an 8-iron, 7-iron in from that angle. It's tough to kind of lift that thing up, cut it, and get it all the way back to that flag. But the thickest rough on the course exists right there, and that little sliver that touches both 1 and 14. And so, my brother yesterday hit it in there. Like, I mean, I was just inside that cut, but he had no chance. Like, we weren't even discussing trying to go for the green. So it's going to be threading the needle there, picking a really precise line off the tee. You can't get too safe, because you could go too far left and be completely hosed in the rough. And if you go too far right, you're obviously jailed by that tree. So that's going to be a needle threaded there. 15, I'm curious to see what tee boxes they use. I think they're all going to be on that right side instead of the classic, the original kind of tee on the top they used to use. But there is a really
How far is that tee on the top on the left? I've never even played that tee.
They haven't used it for a number of years, and I'm trying to even think what the number is, and it'll be blocked
short, right?
It's shorter than the back tees, where like yesterday I think was playing 120-ish for us. I think from them we'll probably play 140, 150 from the back, I'd assume. But they have a really cool broadcast trailer there, Smylie, that's facing 15 green. That I think is going to be I don't know how they're going to use it yet. I just saw the infrastructure. I sent over a pic, but like that could be some really cool visuals of just kind of shooting the side of 15, maybe out towards 16.
The most on cameras in history of a broadcast.
I mean, you just do beauty shots there all day long if you wanted to. And then 16, yeah, as mentioned, there's like that. It's just, the same old deal for them. It's going to be like 240-ish from that back tee.
Jeez, man.
But that, and not that you're spinning a club from that length, a great
how
deal.
About this? How about
but if you
this?
don't carry it, it comes right back off that front.
So
should we start on the top?
Well, just a majority of people have not played Cypress Point that are listening or watching this. Tell everybody about the 16th hole. Everybody's seen pictures of it, but how difficult really is that 16th hole?
Yeah, it's a lot of factors come into play. There's obviously, I think we had like a right to left wind yesterday, but you're effectively talking about a forced carry. If you're playing from those up tees on most days, it's kind of in that 210 to 220 range. And for these guys, it'll probably be closer to, 220 to 230 just to carry that front to make it on the green. And that's why I say that that shaving of the rough they've done, where there is that front green side bunker there that you can see in the pictures I took of the grading where even there, the rough is shorter than the rest of the course, but it's still up, and they have just shaved that front down. So if you do not hit that carry number perfectly and you do not judge the wind perfectly, that ball is coming right back. It's not stopping. You're in the water and you're hitting your third shot there, or you're going to a drop zone. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to play that sort of situation, but it is a very daring shot you have to take on. I don't think we're going to see any of these guys lay up, as some who play there who are worried about the carry will take like a 7-iron out to the left and just try to get up and down for par there. But that is a shot where a ton of, especially if the wind's up and the wind comes into play, there's a lot of conversation I think it's going to have on the 16th tee about how are we going to play this one right to make sure we're not coming back off that front and in the water, or going long and being dead in a back bunker in the rough. That's an equally tough proposition.
Charlie, are all the players required to take Cypress Point caddies?
That's a great question. At Seminole, that was the case. They all took Seminole caddies. I think probably largely because you want guys with local knowledge. And those are the guys that we give it to you the best. And obviously none of these guys are professionals where they have a go-to caddy on the back. So my assumption is they're gonna use Cypress Point caddies, because why wouldn't you? I'm not sure if that's an actual rule as much as it's just a de facto, this is what I need to do if I want to play my best golf at a place where there is a lot of local knowledge to be had.
So the 16th hole, every time I've played it, the wind has been off of the right, and that makes the 17th hole play downwind, which these players can hit driver pretty much up by the green if it's any downwind at 17. So you have a 16th hole that can probably feel like it plays as a par 3, par 4 almost. 17 feels like it needs to be a birdie opportunity for these guys, which is flip wedges in. But then talk about the 18th hole. A lot of conversation. When you talk to anybody about Cypress Point, they're like, God, what a golf course. But then you get to 18. What is your opinion of the 18th hole? And do you think it's a correct finish to potentially the Mona Lisa of golf?
It's funny because we were walking up there yesterday talking to Brian about this, and the original plans for that hole were that they were going to have a suspension bridge that was going to take you back off the edge of that tee box out to that little rock formation that's another 40 yards back there. I think if that was the case for the tee, people would say this is one of the most stunning tee locations in all of golf. Now, at the time of the assessment, this is back in the 1920s, they thought they were going to have to replace a suspension bridge every 10 years. And you can imagine the cost of that.
I wouldn't want to walk across that thing, man.
If it's blowing 30 miles an hour, you're walking a suspension bridge out off the back of 18. Yeah, I'll go ahead and play the up tees on this hole. But that so the knock on it is you have all these majestic holes by the water, and then you get to a hole where you're effectively like, I'm hitting 4-iron there off the tee. You're just kind of trying. There's like a large cypress tree, trying to carry it over so you can hit anywhere from a 9-iron to a gap wedge or a sand wedge up the hill to that green.
Yeah, blind shot too. Can't see it land at least.
That's one of the greens they're going to have to run a little bit slower because it is so slopey that it just balls come right up front, as mine did yesterday. But it's one of those things where it's like, do you want to finish hitting an iron and a wedge and maybe making it into a little bit of a putting contest? I think Smylie, depending on the wind direction, we could see some guys that try to kind of hit it over the trees and drive the green, which I think would add for a ton of intrigue. And these young kids who have the ball speed to do it, that would make a ton of fun as a finisher. But I think I still think there's a lot of intrigue there. There's a lot of, placement and shot value. It seems like there's only one way to play it, but I think that's because we look at it a lot from an amateur perspective. I think we're going to see some guys try to get creative this week with how they play the 18th and add a little bit of drama to some of these matches that are coming down to the last hole.
Well, the format for the Walker Cup versus the Ryder Cup is definitely different. When we look at the Walker Cup, we're talking about only 2 days of matches, so Saturday and Sunday, and there's no Fourball. Like the Ryder Cup has Foursomes and Fourball that goes 36 holes. You're going to have 4 matches on Saturday morning, 4 matches on Sunday morning, just Foursomes, and then you're going to have everybody playing on Sunday, and then 2 guys sitting out on Saturday in singles. So with that in mind, knowing that this format is a little bit different, probably a little bit better for a team that has more depth. And you look at, the last 6 years, U.S. has won 5 of the last 6. What's been the word on the ground? Do you feel like one team, or do you feel like GB&I has a chance this year to potentially win on the road?
I think, it's, I don't want to equate it to the President's Cup. I don't think it's that. I think it is obviously the United States has a deeper roster. You and I have talked about this a little bit of, why can it be closer to the Ryder Cup where you bring Europe and play? Well, that's because there is a Junior Ryder Cup, right? And this is the more historic of the competition. So this one gets all the good venues and the great places to go, but you omit the rest of Europe that would make this a little more interesting. I do think compared to, recent years on the Walker Cup front, that this GB&I team has more talent than they have had in the past. They have, I'm spacing on the kid from Florida State's name, Tyler Weaver. He's one of a top 10, amateur in the world. He's going to be a great player for this team. They have the guy who just transferred to Carolina, Niall Shields-Donegan, who made it to the semifinals of the USAM. He should be in good form. They have Ian Poulter's son, Luke Poulter, a number of other guys who I think they have a fighting chance here. And I think a lot of it does come down to course strategy and how these guys choose to play the course in a way that, it is, you have a lot of different options. And I think I want to rewind a little bit too and talk about some of these front 9 holes as well, because I think there's a lot of interesting things happening here. So on the first hole, it's getting started there, where you're accustomed to seeing the driving range along the right side of 1. And that's, you can blow a driver over there. A 3-wood, whatever you want to do it. That is out of bounds this week. There are hospitality tents there.
Oh, wow.
So no all the people out there who are sick and tired of seeing TIO leave on the PGA Tour, that is going to be a very nervy tee shot. And I think that the issue with it too is, and this again comes down to lines and what the ball is going to do on the ground, is that if you go too far left, that ball hits and starts running. It can end up in some of those native areas. It can end up in a bunker over there. So you really have to be able to commit to a line that's over the top of that tree that lines the right side of that fairway, but also has a right to left shot shape. And for guys who predominantly, it feels like a lot of the young guys are always trying to cut the ball in today's day and age. That's a tough tee shot to take on as your first one of the day and hope that ball is going to hit its line, hold its line, and not drift over into the hospitality tents and end up out of bounds, hitting 3 off the tee there. So I think that's a really interesting wrinkle, and I like the teeth that adds to that first hole.
Who are you planning on watching? Are you going to go over it all during the practice rounds to watch a little bit? Who would you like to get your eyes on?
I definitely want to see Michael Assasso play this week, friend of the show, of course. I want to see Niall play this week, as a Carolina kid. I want to see all the guys I just mentioned. Like we just had Mason Howe just won the USAM. It's the cool thing I think about this competition is you can look back at some of these teams. The USGA's put up a ton of really cool social content this week on both their account and the Walker Cup accounts. You can go back and look and see all these guys who became stars, and this is where they kind of got their start. I mean, we were talking about this, I guess it was last summer, where Davis Thompson wins a John Deere, and I'm like, man, I was following around a Seminole in 2021, and you can kind of see the origins of this. So it's, some of the names you want to see, but part of me is let's kind of take a look at everybody and put a pin in that, because then we're sitting here in however many years, one of these guys is going to be a star. And it's going to be really cool to say, hey, I saw him play the Walker Cup at Cypress Point. I'm bummed that Miles Russell's not here, of course. I think that's the one guy I really would have liked to say I saw him play the Walker Cup at Cypress, but still 2 rosters that are full of really, really good players that you get to kind of see their origins, which should be cool.
The Walker Cup is the Super Bowl of amateur golf, but it's so difficult to make that United States team. When you go back and look, over the last 20 years, for example, and you go look at who was on these teams, it's always heavily debated. What was one of the best constructed Walker Cup teams? But I tell you what, the amount of first team All-Americans and the amount of PGA Tour players on so many of these teams that the Walker Cup is maybe places where their coming out party, if you will, for sometimes, but for the most part, the United States team, when they show up, this is a very talented. So you're talking about some of the most talented amateurs in the world, and then also guys who've been playing not only at the highest level in college golf, but a lot of these players have been playing some PGA Tour golf. I know there's some younger guys on this team, but I just think the overall experience that the United States team has, and then the fact that GB&I is just GB&I and not not GB&I and Europe. I think the advantage, so far, I would say would definitely be on that US side. But I like to see that there are some GB&I guys playing some college golf. You talked about Weaver and Poulter, two guys that are definitely on some really, really good college teams. So I think you'll have to start to see more of that, some players from that GB&I side, because you go and look at the US side, there isn't a player that you don't recognize. But if you go over the last 20 years and you look at the GB&I team, you'll see like 2 players per team. It's like, oh, that guy made it. But then who are the other guys? So I think the overall depth, when you talk about the amount of singles matches that there are, the advantage is going to still be on that US side, especially it being a home one.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I think it's like the reason why I say it's not exactly like a President's Cup is because, the President's Cup on the U.S. side, those guys are all proven stars. Whereas as you're looking at a U.S. team here, they're the best of the amateur level, but you don't know how many of those guys are actually going to blossom into real superstars. So it's there's more talent there, but it's less proven. Whereas exactly to your point, that's why the GB&I team feels a little bit like 2 of those names, but the rest of the guys, just not sure how they're going to play in this setting. But I think a lot of interesting stuff could happen this week at Cypress, and it might depend on the caddy you get this week and sort of his opinion on how to play the course, because I do think a lot of it is I know that you might laugh at that, but really and truly it's you're looking at a course, and that's what I think McKenzie does so well, is just that camouflage piece of you'll stand on a tee. 4 is this way, undoubtedly, where your eyes are taking you to a place where you think that's the safe place, and you hit it over there and you get up there and like, dude, there is no room up here. This was a terrible line to take. I should have actually taken on this thing that looked a lot more menacing from the tee because there was all the space in the world up here. And again, I think that is a theme. I'll say too, 6 is going to be such an interesting one, because I hit driver yesterday. These guys can hit 3 wood, maybe at most, maybe less than 3 wood. And I hit it, if you're looking at the tee, if you go look at a visual from 6 from the tee, it's you aim it above that fairway bunker at the very top right side of that fairway that works dramatically down and to the left and slopes all the way down for a par 5. I hit it up there, Smylie, and I ended up a foot inside the left side of the fairway, just short of the fairway bunker on the left, with a tree in the way, and had to kind of hit a 2-iron around the corner that like chased and ran up to give myself, look for eagle, obviously, because it's playing as a par 5. But it's one of those things where it is, you're going to get some guys who, if they choose to take aggressive lines, not only could the ball end up in a tough place, but if it does end up in the fairway, the sort of stance could be an interesting issue. I mean, I know these guys are the best of the best. They can pull anything off, but you're going to get some uncomfy sort of lies and stances, and the guys who can execute the shots there are the guys who maybe take more conservative lines because they know what they're going to get could pay off, in terms of some of these matches. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how they choose to play this course.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching the Walker Cup. It's going to be on Golf Channel this weekend, and maybe we'll start to see the GB&I get back and rounding into form. 5 of the last 6, like we said, have gone to the U.S., but there was a little stretch there from 99 to 2011 where the GB&I team won 5, where the U.S. had won 4. So GB&I has made a run in this. It's just been a little bit of time, so we'll see what happens this weekend. Final prediction, Charlie, is as we turn the page to captain's picks for the Ryder Cup.
Man, I'm gonna say, and I never had the math right. I guess if there are, let's think about this. There are 8 points available on the first day, and then there are 14 available on the second day.
I believe it's 26.
26 points.
20.
So I'm going to say U.S. wins. What would that be? Let's say I'm going to say 16-10 Team USA.
Okay. All right. I'm going to keep it a little closer. I'm going to keep it a little bit closer with this one. I'm going to probably go, let's go 14-12. Let's keep this as a nail biter. and keeping it interesting down the stretch. It's been such a good year of great golf and great storylines. You can't tell me we're going to get a blowout at Cypress Point. We need a close match for everybody on TV to be watching on the weekend.
I will say this, and we'll close here, and then we'll get on to the Europe Ryder Cup captain's picks. But 8 and 9 pin positions there are going to be very, very interesting, because when we played it on Monday, they had that pin up front right, and that's obviously the one that you try to drive the green. I think they're going to do
spinny.
They'll have it there for one session, I think, at least. But I think they're going to try to kind of tuck that thing back left, make guys think twice about the lines they're going to take. 8, we had they had the pin on the back left shelf, right? So in the video, I think I sent over to you, I hit like 4-iron down there. I have like I got an 8-iron in, 8 or 9-iron in, and so Brian's like, hey, like, we're not even looking at this pin. All right, there's a TV tower back there. We're going to go right side of that TV tower. We're not even paying attention to it. So great. So I take one practice swing and like lay the sod over it with a practice swing. You can see me like standing over this massive pin. And then I proceed to hit the second one, like pulled in 5 feet left of this left pin I was not supposed to be looking at. Barely catches the green and holds, and have like a 15-footer and make the birdie there. And I was like, golly, that is like that. I don't know why I got rewarded for that from the golf gods perspective. I should not have been, but that, like, if we see some of those pins back left or back right on 8, because I think the only pin I could see guys trying to drive 8 green, if maybe you have that front pin. But if you tuck in either of those,
you could argue back. You could
back left.
You could argue back. You're right. No, back right.
Back right.
Because back right, from my standpoint, if you were able to get a driver to run through the fairway to be able to get an angle to that pin, I think it's a difficult wedge shot to get back to that corner. So if you're able to get it through and almost like down the left side, that would be the best angle to be able to chip up the green. I don't like going for the back left because – that would be the easiest one to hit onto the green and then have a decent putt at it. But I think you have to take too aggressive of the line up the right. You have to really trust how far right you have to aim. And you know this as better than anybody, the amount of times you played Cypress. When have you ever heard a caddy say, oh yeah, it's driver here? It's just no caddy's ever handed a driver to their player. I don't see it happening this week, but I would like to see it.
Yeah, I think it depends on where. I mean, that's too early in the match for someone to feel like they need to step on it or press. But I just think, man, and that's why, to your point, it'd be nice to kind of get out and see some of these practice rounds, because I think we might see some aggressive, audacious lines, and with with the way they've set up some of these TV towers, some of the angles, like the one they have behind 8 green, if they can kind of receive a ball that's coming in over that sand dune into that green, and someone successfully drives the green. I mean, the golf visuals, just from an abstract perspective, are going to be unreal this week. So I can't wait to see it on Golf Channel. And I hope everyone tunes in. It's going to be a blast out there this week. All right, Smylie, that is it for our Walker Cup preview, at least for this episode. I'm going to be out here this entire week, so checking it out, hopefully bringing us some insight from the ground. But we are now shifting gears here to the captain's picks made for Team Europe this week, also made on Labor Day on September the 1st. No surprises there, but Smylie, here it's not as much of a surprise as a pleasant inclusion. We have a new partner here on the show this entire month, and at the Ryder Cup itself, Johnnie Walker, and they're going to be bringing us Ryder Cup coverage through a new initiative they're launching. It is the Spirit of the Cup, Smylie. So Johnnie Walker is a brand synonymous with the game of golf for over a century. They are bringing bold energy to golf's fiercest stage and ultimate rivalry with the Spirit of the Cup, a fan-first program celebrates national pride, fandom, and the relentless spirit of competition. This program invites a new generation of fans to experience golf through modern rituals, bold collaborations, and culture-forward experiences. And Smylie, I got to tell you a little bit about this. This is happening while we're going to be up in New York, up at Bethpage Black. We might have to go check this out. There is a Spirit of the Cup tour that Johnnie Walker is putting on leading into the tournament weekend. They're going to bring the Spirit of the Cup tour to the streets around New York City from Wednesday, September 24th through Sunday, September 28th. It's going to be a fun time. It's open to the public. It's open to all golfers and aspiring golfers. You can enjoy a little Johnnie Walker cocktail. And proceeds from those cocktail sales are going to they're going to benefit Fairways to Leadership, a national nonprofit dedicated to advancing access to leaders and leadership opportunities through golf literacy to build the next generation of diverse leaders, one fairway at a time. So how about that, Smylie? Johnnie Walker, they're going to have things you can do that week up in New York City, and it's all going to a good cause. So we're happy to have Johnnie Walker aboard.
I definitely don't turn down any tastings when it comes to Johnnie Walker, so might have to take you up on that, especially when the weather starts to turn a little bit. My drink kind of goes from a little bit more clear to a little darker, so it's kind of perfect timing as far as that goes, especially if I'm at a nice restaurant or a steakhouse and sitting at the bar like so often I am during a PGA Tour season. That's a pretty easy drink. It's a pretty easy first drink go-to for me, getting a little Johnnie Walker at the table, so
do you have your bottles there?
On board. Yeah, I already showed it, bro.
You did? The contrast here is really terrible where I'm at, as you can imagine. I was backlit here.
Showed the Johnnie Walker Blue Label. I'll give it one more little tout here.
There you go. Mine's at home in my office, of course. Couldn't ship them out here for the flight, but excited to get back and continue previewing the Ryder Cup with a little glass of Johnnie Walker, and then hopefully up in New York City, check out the campaign that Johnnie Walker has going on. So let's dig into it, Smylie. The picks were as expected, no surprises whatsoever. I'm going to try to do this off the top of my head, but I think the picks were Matt Fitzpatrick, Sepp Straka, Ludwig Oberg, Victor Hovland, John Rahm, and Shane Lowry. I believe those are the six. Did I get that right?
Nailed it.
Well, Smylie, the upside to recording a podcast live from the Hay near Pebble Beach, of course, is the backdrop, beautiful Stillwater Cove. The downside is if you use your phone as a wireless hotspot and the sun fries it in the middle of recording and you lose connection, you lose about 10 minutes to 15 minutes of your record when you discussed in depth the European Ryder Cup captain's picks. So I believe where we left off was I just named all six picks off the top of my head.
That's right.
And you were segueing to some sort of thought on that. So shall we pick up right there?
I think this is a classic breakfast ball situation. I've already had a nice run through. I feel like I put the golf ball in play as far as the first record goes. But here we are now with our breakfast ball, and that second guy, he always ends up playing better than the first. So I'm hoping that all my thoughts that came out the first time come even better the second time. So yeah, let's get to it.
I trust they will. I think one place that I feel like we had a really good discussion we were talking about is the whole captain's picks, the concept itself of where we shake out on whether or not they should be 6 and 6. You kind of teed up something there. I'd love to pick up that conversation.
Well, I think you make a great point as far as just debating these captain's picks. Going back from 89 to 2006, there were only 2 picks available for the captain. 2008 to 2012, only 4. 2014, there were 3. 2016 to 2018, there were also 4. And then 2021 to 2025, there were 6 picks. So half of your team is captain's picks. And looking at the U.S. captain's picks, which have been heavily debated ever since Rome, and you go back all the way to 2012, which was Medina, the picks have gone 26, 37, and 4. And that is excluding what happened in Rome. So that you have to imagine that stat is going to be much worse from how the captain's picks played over in Rome. So I think the biggest issue you have is that you can't necessarily get the DP World Tour and the PGA Tour to necessarily align from a points perspective, as you see a guy like Rasmus Højgaard making the team strictly based off of the DP World Tour and the points that he earned via the DP World Tour versus the PGA Tour, how it's a rolling points list that they think they have right, but some will say it's maybe not quite maybe it's not quite right. So I kind of feel like 4 would be a better spot to be when you look at, especially when we heavily debated the Ryder Cup this year, Charlie, and you look at the points list and you see players at that, the top 8, you feel like, gosh, it'd be hard to leave a guy at 7 and 8 off of the list. But for example, this year, Colin Morikawa was 8th on that list, and Ben Griffin was at 10. So definitely a lot to talk about there with the captain's picks, even though Europe felt like it was pretty easy for what the decision that Luke Donald had in front of him, but definitely something that we should continue to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's you're trying to figure out really two things. It's like you're trying to solve for what do you want this competition to be, or what do you want to reward? Like, do you want it to be the most competitive version of the competition? And if so, or do you want it to be rewarding on merit, the way that guys have played over a 2-year rolling period, right? And then I think the second thing you're trying to solve for is what is the best way to determine, either the most competitive team and the most merit-based team? And is that a captain with subjective taste, or is it a point system? And I think that, and you just listed a great stat there about the lack of performance really on the U.S. side from the captain's pick. So, maybe the subjective way that theoretically would create a more competitive competition isn't actually the right way either. I think if you look at situations like this year with Ben Griffin, a guy who, there was some sort of debate there as to, whether or not he should make the team because of lack of experience and how you play in a Ryder Cup setting, versus Keegan Bradley picking himself. But it would be a crime, and looking at his resume, to leave him off the team, given all that he's done to earn his spot on this team. So really for me, it's, where are you trying to land on that? And then what is like the knock-on effect of, like, this year's a great example of if Luke Donald only has 4 captain's pick or 2 captain's picks, and you got Jon Rahm playing on a tour, where he's not getting points that are contributing to qualifying, and not necessarily playing well enough in majors to earn the points he needs to qualify. And Luke Donald's trying to decide whether or not he takes Jon Rahm, who he needs on his team, or another guy that is very deserving of making the team that maybe didn't qualify otherwise. And then that it creates a whole separate debate as to whether or not a guy, if he's outside of the top 8 or the top 10, is he really deserving to make the team? So it's an interesting thing to discuss, and I think we swing back and forth really off of what's happened recently. The Billy Horschel whole situation added more captain's picks, but I think the pendulum swings back and forth, and it's interesting. Like even this year, I think to play the conversation ahead, talking about experience and picks, is you got guys like Victor Hovland, Ludwig Oberg, who were stalwarts on the last team in Rome that you had to use picks on. And, it was that good flexibility for Luke Donald to have to make sure those types of guys were on the team, even if they didn't qualify automatically. Definitely.
And I think you make a great point talking about Jon Rahm being on a different tour. I think for the Ryder Cup, for it to be the pedestal that we put it on, we got to make sure that the best players from both sides are playing. When you talk about just the accumulation of points that these guys earn, so you have a correct point system, and then you also have the flexibility of players that play good late, that have better form. Billy Horschel is a good example. Maybe you throw a Sam Burns as an example this year, or a Cameron Young that played their way on the team based off of form. So you have, this system that kind of, I think 6 is you can debate whether it's too many, but I think it's right, because you want to make sure that you get the live guys on, especially you can't have Jon Rahm not playing in the Ryder Cup. And it's going to be a big topic of conversation, whether he's going to be eligible to play in the next Ryder Cup, saying that he's not going to pay the fines that the DP World Tour will be giving him for, I guess, over the next couple of years. And I guess Liv says they're not going to pay the fines. That's something that we're going to have to monitor after this Ryder Cup that we can't speculate on now. But those are things too that moving forward, you're wondering what's the shape of just the professional game in Liv, and what those players are going to have to deal with as far as making the European side.
Yeah, no, I think those are all great points. And maybe we kind of start playing this forward to, again, the player 1 version of the conversation, and maybe spinning it forward to player 2 and see how player 2 does. But I thought you made some really interesting points and had some great stats on just the comparison between these two teams, both in experience and in skill based on format, right? So just that, like, we're looking at guys, we had the whole conversation with Kyle Porter, where really we're looking at a year's worth of stats, instead of isolating strokes gain stats to a specific round or tournament, looking at 6 and 12 month sample sizes and really kind of removing the outliers there and saying, man, it looks like the Americans have probably played better this last year on the whole than the Europeans. But how does that form translate to a team competition where half of the play prior to Sunday is that foursomes alt shot format that the Europeans excel in. And what do we think is going to happen there? And some of these picks that maybe haven't been performing on an individual stroke play level, how do they look in a different setting where their record, year over year in this competition is impeccable?
Well, Luke Donald is bringing an experienced team to Bethpage, and you need an experienced team to win on the road. The last team to win on a road Ryder Cup was back in Medina in 2012. 8 of the last 9 Ryder Cups, the home team has won. So Luke Donald, when he looks at his team and the possibilities of, okay, who could really be an additive piece to my team to really take me over the edge? Well, maybe Marco Paige was probably the player that came up as a possibility of, okay, he's been a guy that's in form. You could totally understand him being picked over maybe a Matthew Fitzpatrick, who has played much, much better this year. But when you look at his Ryder Cup record, he's only played in 1 home Ryder Cup, but his record really hasn't been great. He's 1-7 from a Ryder Cup results standpoint. So you could see a guy like Paige making the team, but Luke Donald is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Take the same team that talked about wanting to go get this road win at Bethpage. So you totally understand that from his perspective. And you got a Højgaard brother in Rasmus, who basically gets all the knowledge from his twin brother telepathically that I know he didn't tee it up, but I'm sure he might be able to kind of tap into that twin thing. You know what I mean, Charlie? Is that fair?
I think tap into that twin thing. Look, if you remember on this very show, when Smylie asked David and Maxwell Ford to name the number on their mind, and they came up with the same one. I think twin telepathy in the golf world, it's a real thing. It's definitely a real thing.
It definitely is, because we had Sepp Straka on, and he was one of the captain's picks. And I've asked Sam Straka, his twin brother, before. It's like, hey, do you kind of can you communicate sometimes and you don't really understand why? And he's like, oh yeah, happens all the time. And I'm like, okay, all right. So this is a twin thing. So Rasmus, although he's the only rookie playing on the Ryder Cup team this year from Europe, I'm going to put a half there for him. So like a 1/2 deal. But I added up the amount of Ryder Cups that these players from the European side have played in, added it all up, divided it by 12 to get a number that kind of surprised me. It's 3.6. That number is a reflection of the amount of experience that these guys have. So 3.6 years of experience through the 12 guys. Obviously, it's an average we're taking. Some guys definitely tip the scales more, like Rory and Justin Rose. Let's see, Rory's played in 8. This will be his 8th, and Justin Rose, this will be his 7th. And few guys that have played less than 3. So I just love that Luke Donald, the having the same captain, a similar team room, the experience from this squad, and they have a goal in mind. And they talked about it afterwards. That's a clip that's been rolled out a ton, that this is a team that they think can go and win this Ryder Cup, and away Ryder Cup, which is one of the hardest things to do in the sport right now. And I think looking at some of this data that we're about to get into, this is the type of team that you look on paper and you say, yep, this is the type of team that can go and do it.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think, and I think you're about to dig into some of the stats, but looking at Tommy Fleetwood's foursomes record, a guy that's probably going to play with Rory McIlroy. We're talking about a John Rahm Tyrrell Hatton pairing, the Sepp Straka and Shane Lowry, Victor Hovland, Ludwig Åberg, the Scandinavians playing together again. I mean, these are guys that, again, referring back to the point I'm making about Kyle Porter and the stroke play quality this year in form. Americans undoubtedly better in that sense, but I really think we could have some volatility along the lines of just thinking back 1 year to what happened in Montreal, where we had one 5-0 session for the internationals, another 5-0 for the Americans. I think this thing is going to swing a lot, because I just think the Americans are going to be much stronger in the Fourball format, and the Europeans, vice versa, in the foursomes format. And then we're going to have a wild day of Sunday singles where it's all going to come down the wire. It's going to be amazing television, amazing to be there on the ground. But, I think that, it's that I think is going to be the determining factor, is just, how much of an advantage can either side find in the format they're better at, and what does that translate to in terms of a lead heading into Sunday?
Totally. And you kind of teed me up a little bit on players like Tommy Fleetwood. And I think most people remember the Francisco Molinari pairing that those two had and how well they played over, and I guess that was in Paris, how well those two guys fared. But I was amazed too at Tommy Fleetwood's record in the Ryder Cup. 7-3-2 is ridiculous. It's hard to get points in Ryder Cups, and Tommy Fleetwood has been a player who's been able to step in early, have success, and been able to carry it over Ryder Cup to Ryder Cup, whether it was home or away. And now he was 0-1-2 at Whistling, but actually earning a half a point in 2 matches actually was pretty good for that European side that year. There was not many points to go around, but he's 4-0 in foursomes, which is a incredibly difficult format. And he's also 2-0 with Rory. So Rory's had a multitude of partners. Just go down the list. He's had plenty, but the ones that he's had most success with, actually shocking, Thomas Peters. He was 3-0 with Thomas Peters. I believe that was, I think that was Medina. I'm not quite positive. Could be corrected on that. And then I find that, like, okay, so Rory potentially has a foursomes partner in Tommy Fleetwood. So there's a team right there. And then too, Justin Rose was a huge surprise to me when I looked at his foursomes record, 7-2-1. He didn't play foursomes back in Rome, but still, that's an incredible asset to have in your back pocket if you feel like a guy isn't quite in form, maybe in practice, and that you can just kind of throw in there as a utility piece of a guy who's got so much experience. And then other guys too, like John Rahm, he was an absolute bear at Whistling Straits. Everybody seemed to play poorly, but John Rahm was clearly like one of the best players that week. He was the world number 1. Scotty Scheffler took him down in singles. I think we talk about that a little bit, but his record that week was just insane. And he's also 4-0 in foursomes. So you got 2 players that are undefeated in that format. And then you have possible partners, of course, with Rahm and Hatton, who's already a team member that he has a close relationship with. And then Shane Lowry and Sepp Straka, two players that have won a match in Rome in that first session last year. And then we saw what Hovland and Ludwig did to Scotty Scheffler and Koepka.
The old 9-7.
Yeah. So it's easy for me to see that the pairings for foursomes are going to be fairly easy for Luke Donald to put together, at least out on Friday morning. I think you're not going to lose the Ryder Cup based off how you play in foursomes, unless you just get trounced. But I think the United States will definitely lean heavily on just trying to get to singles play at even. If we can get there at even, we're going to feel good about our chances the following Sunday with the home crowd, having a chance to go and win that Ryder Cup at home. But if Keegan Bradley and their vice captains and their stats department are going to have to find a way to get either unexperienced players playing in the Ryder Cup on Friday morning paired with somebody that may not have played a ton with. So that's why I lean heavily towards the favorites, at least in the foursomes pairings, with Europe already being set and getting off to a good start, which is why I was a little surprised to maybe not see the United States start out with 4 balls in a session that maybe they're been better at over time. But you have a little bit of an advantage in a home atmosphere in the 4-ball, or the foursomes, I should say, with it being a little bit of an awkward format that you're only hitting every other shot, and playing a different golf ball and having the home crowd and just getting used to all the adrenaline. But the United States have to find a way to get some foursomes pairings together that they're comfortable with. And we've talked about it in that last episode, but still, I think there's some unanswered questions on who Bryson's going to play with, and then how they're going to fill out the rest of the lineup with a JJ Spawn and where he's going to potentially play, or who Colin Morikawa is going to play with. So I think they might lean a little bit more on form heading into that Friday morning, where I think the European side is going to lean into history and experience of guys that have played together.
Well, Smylie, my laptop is about to die. Boy, did this day go from a relaxing one by the ocean to a highly stressful production situation. I'll tell you what, I could use a glass of Johnnie Walker right now. I'm ruining the fact that it's back in North Carolina. I think what happens is current Charlie, I guess future Charlie, tosses the past Charlie for Smylie's final thoughts on the whole Ryder Cup situation. But I will say at this point, we are greatly appreciative of Johnnie Walker presenting this coverage for the next month. Ryder Cup talk. Every single week, we're going to bring you a Ryder Cup segment, thanks to Johnnie Walker. And this is my toss here, Smylie. I have no idea where it's going to come out on the other side, but let's just hope this time travel works out well.
Yeah, the only other player that I really wanted to kind of touch on, really two, Bobby Mack and also Victor Hovland. Victor Hovland was a captain's pick. The fact that he was also very good at whistling straights for a player that didn't necessarily get all the points out of that whistling straights, but he's played in a way Ryder Cup, and he's such a good iron player. And he's got a little bit of an open ballpark that driver's been a little bit off for him, but it's going to be open enough to where his golf ball is going to be in play all the time, and his iron game's ridiculous. And Bobby Mac and Cheese, man, I think the play that he has been able to put on over the last month or so, can he keep that form up? I'm excited to see if he's going to be paired with Justin Rose, and could he be a breakout star for that European team? He only played in the Fourball matches, but he also played singles and went out and got a W against Wyndham Clark. So Bobby Mac and Cheese talked about how nervous he was at the last Ryder Cup, and that was a home one. I think he's much more seasoned since then and has had a lot more experience. But he believes he's probably a top player in the world. So he would be the guy I look to right now as a potential breakout European star, especially if a guy like Rory doesn't play good. I don't think Europe could afford Rory to not play well in past Ryder Cups and them not win. Now I feel like Europe can win the Ryder Cup and maybe have a Rahm or a Rory maybe not play up to his ceiling, and have guys in the back end that can potentially win you points.
There you have it. Tossing to the ghost of Charlie Pass to pick up the rest of this episode. Well, we're going to keep checking in on the topic of the Ryder Cup every week, thanks to our good friends at Johnnie Walker. Each week, the latest developments. We're going to see how some of these guys play in the fall. Just get ready for Bethpage, man, because I cannot wait. You were texting Jackson and I. First Ryder Cup either of us are going to be at. The atmosphere is going to be incredible. So we can't wait to be there and give you some on-the-ground analysis. Smylie, I've just realized my wife left our leftover nachos box here at the Hayes Place, so I believe I need to tend to that, and then get to the happenings here on the peninsula as we cover the Walker Cup this week. Going from Walker Cup to Ryder Cup, lots of cups in this mix this month, all very cool ones at very cool places. So that's all I got for you, Smylie. Any final thoughts to take the people out before we sign off for today's episode?
I tell you what, if your phone has been overheated, I can't imagine what those nachos are currently like. And I would totally understand that would be an easy meal after starting the year 0-1 and getting blown out by TCU. Not the start we were looking for.
Man, I didn't think you were going to do it to me, and you did. Yeah.
Here's the thing. I've been on a bit of North Carolina, giving you problems. I felt bad. It reminded me of the Coach Orgeron era after he won the national championship, where you just feel like a helpless dog to where you turn off the game at halftime. I hope it doesn't get to that point this year. So I'm actually on the train of encouragement moving forward for North Carolina. Just want to go ahead and put my foot forward in there to show my support. That was my one dog and my one dig with the nachos. But now I'm moving over into the boat where I'm gonna start paddling with the fans. I'm gonna start paddling with you.
That's almost more disrespectful, which I appreciate that from a hater's perspective. Yeah, I'd say, look, if you are trying to kind of relaunch the program on national television to much fanfare and hype, my personal playbook would not be losing by 5 touchdowns at home. But I'd say this, I think that the proverb goes, let he who has won a Super Bowl without Tom Brady cast the first stone. I certainly have not done that, so I can't really comment, and I guess we'll see what happens next week on the road to Charlotte. Let's hope for some better tape that week.
I can't wait to see that line. I cannot wait to see that line. Wait, you're going on the road to Charlotte?
On the road to Charlotte, playing against a guy who started for quarterback for us last year, Connor Harrell, which, by the way...
Why are we going on the road to Charlotte?
I guess it's just one of those things that maybe Mac Brown set up. But here's a very funny inside baseball thing for this show. Connor Harrell, the new Charlotte starting quarterback, was at Carolina last year, appeared on one of our Man in the Street interviews at Quail Hollow, the PGA Championship. So we have a real tie and interest to this game next week. If we lose on the road to Charlotte, it's a tough scene.
If that line is around 5, it's going to be the stinkiest thing in the world, man. If North Carolina opens up as a 5-point favorite on the road against Charlotte, you might as well just start barking for that home dog.
I'd say, honestly, let's just throw out all the tape outside the first drive. Let's just surprise the guys this week, Bill. Let's get in there and set up the film. We think we're going to watch a bunch of bad plays. Like, no, guys, we're just going to watch the first drive over and over and over again. We're going to boost confidence. That's how we're going to get the trail back on, or the train back on the tracks.
What time do y'all play? I'm actually looking up the line as we speak.
I think I want to say it's a night game, which is it's going to be like during the single session of the Walker Cup. So I don't even know if I'm going to tune in.
All right, the line was 21.5 before the game last night. It has shifted 9 points to 12.5.
Ooh.
So
if that gets single digits this week, that's
I feel bad for the Cats that took UNC before the game last night against Charlotte, taking that 21.5. It's like, I'm going to get a part of this before North Carolina blows out TCU. And here you are hoping that North Carolina can win by more than 3 touchdowns. That's
someone watched that opening drive and they jumped on like the Charlotte line when they moved to like 24, and now they're like, all right, I've never seen that money again. So there you go. Yeah, it's listen, there's always, it's only one loss, Smylie, one out of conference loss.
Hey, listen, I've been 0-1 to start every year the last 5 years. So to stand here 1-0,
not this year.
There it is. Nice to see little LSU get the victory in Little Death Valley.
It's, you love seeing the underdog get it done, man. It's really, really good stuff.
Go Tigers. Enjoy this nachos. Look forward to the content this week. And it's going to be a fun month of September.
It will indeed. Thanks to everyone for watching and listening. Stay tuned the rest of the week for more stuff from the ground here at Cypress Point from Walker Cup. Talk to you soon.
I listen to this podcast. It's really cool. And
all of our lovely fans and subscribers, but make sure you like and subscribe.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too. So please keep it up.
For all the good people at YouTube, like and subscribe.
You guys have some good takes, so I'm happy to come on and shoot the